Hello ho ho folks, I'm Santanon and this is the only news that matters. Australia. Is it a country? Is it a continent? Is it an island? Is it all three? Or none of those things, because Australia doesn't exist. Today, we're here to talk about the home of the crocodile hunter and Men at Work. The home of Vegemite and Mel Gibson's dad. The home of Crocodile Dundee and Shrimp on the Barbie. Yeah, you Aussies call them prawns, but you also call soccer football, and you don't even actually exist. So fuck you all, and fuck your opinions on what things should be called. Today, let's talk about the land down under. Let's talk about the truth behind Australia. Scientists say that the continent of Australia was formed about 10 million years ago via plate tectonics or some shit. Now, I've done plenty of research into plate tectonics, and I've been all over the earth, but I've never seen plates doing tectonic things. Anyways, at some point, the Dutch discovered Australia and called it New Holland. Then at another point, before Captain Cook was eaten in Hawaii, he had claimed half of Australia for England. Then, something happened that we still feel the ripples of to this day. The year was 1776, and the event was known as the American Revolution. It started when George Washington chopped down King George's cherry tree. And then the British came over and were like, "George Washington, did you chop down the king's cherry tree?" And Washington was all, "I cannot tell a lie." And then the redcoats called King George and told him, and then King George said, Hello, put me on the phone with him. I want to hear him apologize. But Washington escaped on horseback with the help of Paul Revere and refused to apologize. And those two rode all over the American countryside yelling,
"The Blimey Limeys are coming! The Blimey Limeys are coming!"
And then Betsy Ross sewed a flag. They picked her up and met up with Ben Franklin and Crispus Attucks. They all kind of culturally appropriated Native American clothing and stuff and decided to go to Boston to have a tea party by throwing all of King George's tea into the Boston harbor while yelling, "Fuck taxes!" And King George called up George Washington and was like, Hello, apologize this time or this means war. And then George Washington said,
"I am a general now, and I'm the president of the USA."
And then Ben Franklin, Crispus Attucks, Betsy Ross, and Paul Revere all chanted, USA! 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 And it was the first USA chant in history. And in retaliation for all that went down, King George kidnapped and killed Crispus Attucks. And you may be asking yourself, why only Crispus? Well, that's because our founding fathers loved Crispus Attucks. And also, King George was pretty racist, because only British people are racist. No one else in the world, besides British people, are racist. And that's actually a fact. Look, I found this graph. It proves it. So keep that in mind. Only British people are racist. Anyways, long story short, the Brits eventually lost and America was its own country, and King George never had another cherry tree again as part of the treaty. And eventually, way down the line, King George's descendants killed Princess Diana. But I'm getting sidetracked. That's a story for another time. Right, so America kicked the Brits' ass. The Brits' asses? Asses. And that means the Brits couldn't use Georgia as a prison anymore. Oh, yeah. Before the American Revolution, the British used Georgia as a prison. So anyways, the Brits had to find a new jail. So they shipped all their criminals to Australia. Supposedly. I say supposedly because Australia clearly doesn't fucking exist. Where's the proof? Satellite images? Go fuck yourself. Satellites are controlled by the globalists, aka the Illuminati, aka the royal family, and sometimes the Pope, and they all profit off the lie. Google Images, doctored and distorted by NASA. NASA stands for Never a Straight Answer, am I right? But anyways, you may say, but the Australians have celebrities. Okay, let's just think about a few of those celebrities. Jim Jeffries, clearly a British man putting on an accent. Observe him for more than 5 minutes, and it's obvious he acts just like a British person. Hannah Gadsby? She's actually a Kiwi, all the way from New Zealand. Steve Irwin. Okay, this is wacky, but hear me out. He was actually an Australian. I know I said Australia doesn't exist, therefore Australians don't exist. And that's true. But the royals, they had to reinforce their lies. And they had an MK Ultra style program where they took a British newborn. They had a British newborn. They raised him in a special part of South Africa and convinced him he was Australian. So Steve Irwin wasn't in on it. He was actually brainwashed into thinking he was Australian. So we can't blame him. Rest in peace. And you may ask me about Paul Hogan, aka Crocodile Dundee, aka the most famous Australian of all time. He is an actor. He's not actually Australian. How do I know? He used to date my mom when I was in 3rd grade. His real name is Ted. He's from Nebraska originally. He's the one who told me all of this. He was my source, and I've been full of rage ever since. We've all been lied to by actors. Actors just like the Australian celebrities. And what do actors do? They act. And they do funny voices. I mean, just look at the guy who plays Dr. House. That dude is British as fuck in real life. Dr. House sounds American as fuck. If you ever met an Australian, guess what? They were either a computer-generated simulation like the Tupac hologram, or they were an actor working for the royals to reinforce the lies. The whole nation of England is in on it too. All their racist citizens and their racist royal family are duping the world. You may want to ask about the Aborigines. They do exist, but they were all from a small island off the coast of New Zealand. That's the island that the Dutch discovered and called New Holland. Then they sold it to Captain Cook, who gave it to the royals, who used British royal reptilian brainwashing technology to convince all the aboriginals on the island to think that they were from a place called Australia. And then the royals were really mean to the Aborigines. Because, you know, the British are racist. They're so racist, in fact, the current queen once jumped out of an airplane to celebrate the Olympics, and she screamed, "If it's not white, it's not right." I mean, if you want more modern examples of how racist the royal family is, look at the way they treated Meghan Markle. Why do you think she peaced out with her husband, who's the prince? She was like,
I'm Audi 5000 because they're racist.
You may want to ask about the exclusive species of plants and animals of Australia. You know, you may bring up the koala. Well, I got news for you. Those are animatronics. Every single koala in the world. Originally, they were made by Walt Disney's great-grandfather, who worked for the New World Order, and they also contracted out, later on, the guy who eventually invented Chuck E. Cheese. You may bring up kangaroos. Those are nuclear radiated deer that the royals stole from the Chernobyl disaster site. You always hear about Australia has poisonous octopuses and super deadly venomous snakes and poisonous coral reefs and suicide plants like the Gimpy Gimpy and crazy spiders and all kinds of nasty and scary shit. They tell you that shit because they don't want you to go there. It's because Australia doesn't exist. But if you do decide to go there, you gotta understand the Dutch, the South Africans, the New Zealanders, they're all complicit in this as well. They're helping the royals and the British citizens, who are all racist, cover up their lies. They're doing that because the royals pay them all a shitload of money every year to keep the lie up. See, you may have even been to Australia, but you haven't. It's bullshit. The airlines, the pilots, and crews, they're all in on it too for the same reason. They're all a part of the royals' agenda. Where you really went, you may be wondering, is a place in South Africa where they've hired a bunch of Dutchies, Kiwis, some Americans, South Africans, and Limeys to act all Australian. Why do the royals go to all this trouble, you may wonder? Originally, they went to all the trouble because they wanted to distract us all from the fact that they committed one of the largest genocides in the history of the world by dropping their prisoners off to drown in the ocean while telling everyone they're sending them to the land of Australia. Australia doesn't exist. It's a hoax. One of the biggest hoaxes of all time. Again, how do I know? My source, Paul Hogan, aka Ted, aka the guy who dated my mom when I was in 3rd grade, told me the truth. It's cause of the Bloomin' Onion. That's right. See, the royals started this restaurant called Outback Steakhouse back in the year 1802. Kinda as like an Illuminati style inside joke to make themselves laugh because they were all in on it, but we weren't, the public, so they're like rubbing it in our face that Australia doesn't actually exist. But then, the Earl of Sandwich, while pretending to not be gay, accidentally invented the blooming onion. The royals killed him. They replaced him with a clone, and his clone invented the sandwich. And then the royals patented the blooming onion, and they've never had money trouble since. They make so much money, hand over fist. And basically, the Bloomin' Onion and Outback Steakhouse are bankrolling the Illuminati. Thank you for tuning in today. God bless and hell Santa.
The Only News That Matters is a production of the Children's Television Workshop. Promotional consideration provided by Outback Steakhouse. It's blooming great.
Outback Steakhouse!
And by viewers like you. Thank you.